on Zoom as well. So we're just waiting for Councillor Nees and Councillor McDonald, but we'll get on and start the meeting in any event. So just starting with the normal statement, just reminding everyone that the public section of this meeting is being live streamed and recorded, and the recording will be made available on our website following the meeting. Just a reminder that local government decision making doesn't offer any protection to councillors or staff and the public for comments made during meetings that are subsequently challenged in court of law and determined to be slanderous. Apologies. I have apologies from Councillor Clark. Any further apologies? There are none. Councillor Von Dardel's in for early departure. Chairman Leader for early departure. Welcome, Councillor Nees. So I'll move those apologies be received. All those seconded, Councillor Brunning. All those in favour, aye. Against and carried. There's no public forum. No items that aren't already on the agenda to be considered. The order of business, there is to be no change to the order of business. Namuta, thank you. Declarations of conflicts of interest. Are there any there? Yes. Declarations, there are no declarations of conflicts of interest. Public excluded business to be transferred to the open, there is none. So we're now moving to the minutes of our previous meeting of the 8th of August. I move that they are a true and correct record, seconded by Councillor Crosbie. Thank you to Councillor Crosbie. Are there any matters arising? There are none. I will put the minutes to be received. All those in favour, aye. Against and carried. So now turning to the Chairperson's report, and before I hand to Namuta to introduce this report, I think it goes without saying that clearly, quite a bit of work has been undertaken and some progress achieved during this training by this committee. But I think it's an appropriate time to just pay tribute and to acknowledge the input of staff into all of the matters that we have been considering during this triennium. I have to say it's probably a truly pan-organisational effort, so that every function within or group within the council has been involved in some way or t'other, pulled probably together by the policy group, but nonetheless, every single function has been involved. And on your behalf, councillors, I just want to say our grateful thanks to our staff for their professionalism and the standard of their reporting. I also want to acknowledge in particular the governance support, Jenny in particular, who's been a huge support, and also the committee champion, Namuta, who is the epitome of professionalism and who has been a great support. So without further ado, I'll call on Namuta to introduce the report. Thank you.
Could I just endorse your comments? And the other thing I think is notable is the document I circulated from regional sector, which highlights a number of participants from this council who sit on those seats, because that's really the formation of policy and implementation development. And I think it's notable that there's so many from within this council that are participating at that level.
Tēnā koutou councillors. So the Chairman's report is on page 17 of your agendas. As per usual, this report covers a number of topical matters, including an attachment 1, an update on government reforms and implications for the council, an update on change 5 to the Kaituna River for the regional policy statement, and change 6, our national policy statement for urban development implementation. But most importantly in this report is a reflection of the achievements of this committee to date. So just some of those achievements include endorsing the strategic direction from the long-term plan, adopting the Air Quality Plan Change 13 to the Regional Natural Resources Plan, adopting the long process that got us to the Lake Rotorua Nutrient Management Plan Change 10 to the Regional Natural Resources Plan. Likewise, for the Awatariki Fanhead Plan Change 17 to our Regional Natural Resources Plan. You've made the Regional Coastal Environment Plan operative. You adopted Te Hononga, our Māori Relationships and Engagement Natural Policy Statement for Freshwater work program, and given us significant direction on freshwater. You've approved the draft Regional Policy Statement Change 6 to the Kaituna River, revised our Climate Change Action Plan, extended the Rotorua Air Shed boundary, provided strategic direction on Sustainable Homes Scheme, and also approved for referral to Council the Regional Policy Statement Change 6, to name a few activities from this committee. So that certainly is the key component of this Chairperson's report. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Namuta, questions? Councillor Nees.
Not a question, just a comment and a congratulations to staff. I really appreciate the summary. There's a lot in the review of achievements that I'd almost forgotten about because it seems like light years away. So much has been packed in this achievement, in this report. So I just want to thank you because it was a very useful review. I guess my other comment is when I have a look at that very useful summary attached on the upcoming legislative and government policy changes, two questions come to mind. Has the organisation the capacity to deliver on all this change, as well as continue with business as usual? And if not, how will we prioritise our activities?
Tēnā koutou councillors. So through the chair, we are always looking at how we are able to deliver new on direction once it lands. We do a review of what's required in order to be able to meet any new implications. Following the release of the draft bills, I think is another key point in time for the Natural Built Environment Act and the Regional and the Spatial Planning Act. Once those are released, I think that will be another key opportunity to reflect on the forward work program and what that looks like, and then be able to bring advice back to council in terms of what next steps might look like. But certainly we are always looking at ways to be able to support reform and change, not just within our organisation, but we work really closely with the regional sector in terms of how we can be working smarter and more efficiently, so that we're not reinventing the wheel, and so that we are working together. So we will certainly continue to do that.
I think, Councillor Nees, if you also flick to the next report on the implementation of NPS Freshwater, the issue you've raised becomes even into starker contrast for us. Context. Get it right. Okay. So really good question, and I would hope that the new council would have a very good discussion around its strategic directions and the way it wants to prioritise its work going forward. Are there any further questions or comments? And Councillor Crosby.
If I can, through you, Chair, just to add a little bit to the report, which is essentially an update report as well, and also acknowledging the enormous amount of work achieved this year by the staff and the council. There's some other things happening that Chairman Leader and myself are aware of that could impact on the Regional Council. Is a lot of concern around transport funding by our sector in the initial instance, but it goes beyond that actually. It goes right through this current state of the state highway network. There's deep concern, if you travel around the country on our roads, about the state of the pavement. Or lack of it. There's deep concern about the integration into Waka Kotahi's ability to work with growing areas, and we see that here in the Western Bay, etc., etc. So to that end, we've started, LGNZ has started a series of ground-up workshops. We had one last Friday, which was very good. There was a deputation of mayors to Waka Kotahi last week. The outcome of that was quite simply that we need to work together to continue to identify the core issues. From the government perspective, they believe the funding is there. They're not quite sure why it's not being delivered to meet the needs of the current situation. All that aside, is we know there is a a fundamental problem there that needs to be addressed, and it needs to be addressed quickly. The other issues, of course, is we have, as the report says, some significant pieces of legislation landing all at once. We have the second water services bill apparently coming probably late October, as we understand, maybe early November. Now, that in itself doesn't impact significantly on the regional sector, but it is aligned to us. But more importantly, of course, the two RM bills are also landing at the same time. And of course, this is when local government is going through the change of resetting its councils, etc. So there's going to be quite a challenge, I think, to get input into those three pieces of significant legislation. And to top it all off, the Future for Local Government final paper is going to apparently come out at the same time for comment. So it's going to be difficult, and we need to find a mechanism to make sure that elected members of the day, as best they can, get input into those significant pieces of one legislation and one think piece effectively as we move forward.
Thanks, Councillor Crosby. Any further questions or comments? Julie, I have one question of you in terms of attachment 1, or Namuta or somebody. Bottom page 25, or the first page of the attachment, National Planning Framework. Current information is that the development of the NPF won't commence until the NBA is enacted, which is likely to be mid-late 2023. So is that correct, that work won't be started until mid-late 2023? And if so, when's it likely to be finished?
This is just things that we've inferred from presentations that we've been at, etc. So the latest thing, actually even updating that, is that it's likely to go to the Board of Inquiry at late 2023. So presumably it would sort of come into effect during 2024, or sort of by the end of 2024 is our understanding. So yeah, we understand that they're actually starting to do work on the NPF now to pull that all in, but they are still very clear that anything that is an NPS, so the freshwater, the urban development, we've just got the highly productive land that we're just having a look at. They're very clear that we must carry on and be delivering whatever needs to be delivered, you know, through the current sort of processes that we have to do. So yes, I'm thinking sort of late 2024 is when there might be some final clarity in terms of that. Whereas in actual fact, it says won't commence until mid to late 2023. Well, I think they're actually starting work on it now, but the actual bill will go to the Board of Inquiry in late 2023.
Thanks, Julie. This attachment to me just speaks volumes about the complexity of the triennium ahead. It is unbelievable. I've never seen anything quite like this. So somehow there's going to have to be, for the new council, a way through it all, and a way to focus on what's really important. So our colleagues on Zoom, nice to see you, Councillor Thurston. Any comments, questions? There being none. Oh, Councillor Thurston, are you wanting to talk?
No, I was just being friendly, Madam Chair, and apologies for the lateness.
Lovely to see you. Okay, sorry, Councillor Winters.
While we're in the reflecting mode, Madam Chair, can I just, on behalf of my Rotorua colleagues, thank staff as well. PC10 was the big one for us, and I've probably been involved since its inception about 15 years ago. And it worries me that these sorts of things take so long They're so expensive, time consuming, emotional drainings as well. And then also the airshed, we've extended the boundary, but that one started 15 years ago, Karen, with the new bylaws. Whilst we've got them across the line in the last 3 years, the gestation period for these is just astronomical in terms of time, energy, and the like. So just on behalf of my Rotorua colleagues, thanks staff, we've got there, but like you say, Madam Chair, the freight train's coming in the next 3 years.
Councillor Winders, no further questions or comments. I will move the recommendation, which is to receive this Chairperson's report, seconded by Councillor Nees. All those in favour, aye, against and carried. Moving now, Nikki, to the essential freshwater policy program update. And councillors, you'll note that the risk report has been updated and paints a telling picture. Welcome, Nikki. Welcome, Stephen. So we're in your capable hands.
Thank you and good morning, councillors. Yes, this is an update paper on the Essential Freshwater Policy Programme. A couple of points to note. In section 3, we cover an update on what's happening with national regulations and a few more delays. So we're now hearing that the Freshwater Farm Plan Regulations Cabinet paper won't be released to us just yet. So we were expecting that about a month ago. And that the regulations may not be gazetted in early 2023. We understand the NES for human drinking water supply. Indicatively, the date is still late 2022, but we haven't seen draft material. And the NES for freshwater and NPS for freshwater changes relating to wetlands has gone through, I think it's a 3rd round of consultation just on whether coastal marine area wetlands were included. And we are now waiting still for the gazettal of those changes. So all of our work needs to look to integrate those once they come out. The main thing in this report, or content in this report, is an update on the risks register or schedule. And there are many other risks in the program. These are the ones that we have selected out as the largest and those that can't be fully mitigated. And you can see that most or a good chunk of those have become real issues that we're contending with in this program. And we've set some actions in there showing what we're doing to try to address those through the work program. If there are any questions, we can take them. I understand there might have been a couple prior to the meeting that Stephen Lamb is here to answer.
Can't wait, Mr. Lamb. So, Councillor Nees.
Thank you. I was just really concerned about the escalating risk, and the one that popped up for me is overseer and the potential that it might affect our nutrient plan change rules. So how are we covering that? Are we covering that within the new natural resources plan work? Are we having a bob each way because we didn't think we need to go there with nutrient rules for Rotorua because we already had the legislation? So what is the plan to cover that risk?
As we understood it, once the review of overseer came out, and as we still understand it, we may not be able to use overseer in a regulatory way for new rules for nitrogen management. And we're still waiting for the reviewed overseer model and statements about how it should or could be used in plans. We're still reasonably confident that it will still be appropriate for the Lake Rotorua rules, but we will have to look at that when the material comes out. How do we deal with that? Well, we're working through our policy issues and options now. I guess for all of the contaminants, sediment, phosphorus, E. coli, we didn't have this type of tool. That makes it more difficult to do a farm-based allocation system. In most parts of the region, we don't have the benchmarking at a farm level to have initiated with that type of approach from the outset. And so we're looking at risk-based tools, farm environment plans, and other potentially rules, options relating to different types of rules to address high-risk loss, contaminant loss activities. So working through those options now and looking to have them as a suite of things for engagement next year.
Thank you. But for now, it's our suite of rules is operational, and we can continue to use those, notwithstanding the findings on an overseer.
Yes, we can still apply different types of rules to inputs, potentially some outputs, and to activities where we've got good evidence base around effects.
Thank you. And just one other question, if I can, Madam Chair. We have got some red flags around our tangata whenua engagement. So we had an engagement plan. How many gaps are there in our engagement plan? I mean, how many of the possible people that we identified that we wanted to talk to have we not been able to engage with? And has there been any progress with the collective engagement of tangata whenua? Because that was one of the mitigants, was to try and get people in groups to get a shared view. Have we made much progress on that?
So there's a few questions in there. The first one is, have we engaged with everyone we wanted to engage with? And the answer is clearly no. I think what we're saying here is that we've tried to engage with as many people as possible in the iwi hapu trust landowner category, which, as you understand, then starts to stretch into a number of people. What we've come to is that this is one of the areas where the capacity, capability, and resourcing is biting now. And so we've made best endeavours to engage, and now we're sort of, in a sense, looking inwards a little bit to say it's time to write a plan. Which is not to say engagements will stop. Where we are engaged in relationships, they must continue. That's a non-negotiable. If more people want to engage with us, we can kind of build that in as well. But essentially, we're saying we had high expectations, high aspirations of what we'd get. We are going to look at how a plan can bring that in the future. So we've got broad detail now, or broad information. We don't have specific information, but we have enough broad information to write the plan. There are three collective projects about to kick off. So that's with TAPS, Te Arawa Primary Sector, Waiora Mātātua, which is centred around Ngāti Awa, but that's looking at the Mātātua collective. And then the last one is Tauranga Moana, Waimari, which is a project which has been built up, hasn't really got off the ground yet. We've found another consultant who may be able to kickstart that for us. So all those are in progress to get started now.
Any further questions or comments? Councillor Winters, and then Councillor McDonald.
Yeah, Nikki, Jane's picked up on overseer, but the one for me there, you're underlined on page 25, slippage is occurring for the timeframe delivery for the proposed plan change in July. So is it going to, when you say slippage, are we still going to meet the deadline that could be December 2024? Is that the slippage, or is the slippage beyond 2024?
The slippage I was referring to there was in multiple work streams that are working towards that July 2024 deadline. We are seeing several of those work streams that we thought would occur can consecutively, now all operating alongside to try and get them done. So a lot of integration work and talking between work streams to try and get them aligning. So there's been slippage within the program. We're still aiming to have a good suite of working draft policy options for discussion and community engagement next year. And that's really quite critical, because if we don't get that started and start that engagement and feedback, we won't have robust material from the community and tangata whenua through that process too, to amend and develop those options for approval before the 2024 deadlines. At this stage, we're still aiming for that July 2024 date, but I think that realistically that will be a topic we will bring to the new council, and still aiming within the 2024 RMA deadline.
Perhaps if I can also just add to that through the chair, a lot of these, the timeframes being pushed out are a combined factor of a lot of changes in the operating environment. So you'll recall we previously brought a paper to you to reconsider extending the timeframes based on the impact of COVID that it's had in itself, not just on the availability of our partners to be engaged in these processes, but also availability of technical experts to be able to contribute to some of our key work streams, in addition to those areas that Nikki mentioned earlier about the inputting into some of the key legislation, which is still having an impact on our work in terms of the freshwater farm plans, the wetland provisions, and the NES for sources for drinking water. So just, I guess, a reflection of the changing environment and that now compounding in terms of our timeframes.
So got Councillor McDonald and then Councillor Brunning.
Morena, Madam Chair. Just a comment to Stephen around the engagement with tangata whenua, and particularly for the Māori constituency, but I'm sure my other two Māori councillors will probably share the same sentiment. And is that to involve the Māori councillors in that engagement, a plan you're looking at for the region. I've had the opportunity to speak to a lot of the Māori land trusts of late, and there is a willingness to be involved in this. So I'm happy to assist staff in the whole engagement plan that they're looking at.
Thank you. Councillor Brunning, then Councillor Iti.
Yeah, while it isn't strictly part of this agenda, I'm going to slip it in with your permission. Are we aware that there are some problems with nutrient reporting and the balance system not being compatible and able to be readily used for the nutrient reporting due this month?
Have a crack at that one.
So through the chair, yes, as a regional sector, we have been working together on the timeframes that have been stated and the complexities with the reporting. So yes, we do have awareness of that.
Councillor Iti and then Councillor White.
Kia ora, Madam Chair, kia ora koutou. My question's regarding the water quality risk, and in particular that there's a risk that current land use intensifies prior to the 2024. And you've got in there that temporary national regulation will control large-scale conversions to more intensive land use. What is that temporary national regulation that's being proposed? Also, what other tools do you have as a council to help mitigate that risk of further land use intensifications in our region before 2024? Kia ora.
Thank you. In the National Environmental Standard for Freshwater at the moment, there is a temporary regulation that expires in 2025 or when our regional plan is notified, which basically requires that if you're converting from forestry to pasture or pretty much anything to dairy, you have to get a consent or demonstrate that you're not increasing contaminant losses. And that's quite a hard test. As I understand it, we haven't had an application for that in the time that the regulation has been set. One of the things in terms of what can we do, the intention of that being temporary was to hold the line on conversion. It doesn't address intensification within an existing land use. So say increasing stock intensity within an existing land use. So the intention is that the regional councils will then look at what the issues are and implement something that is appropriate or replaces that in our regional plan. And we'll need to look at how that is framed. We've got that challenge that we have to maintain water quality everywhere, and the question of what does that mean for new activities that intensify or new discharges. So that's one of the things we're working through and delivering policy options for.
Kia ora. Just a supplementary question, Madam Chair. Is there a record kept of intensifications across the region, or in particular in certain catchments? If we see a particular rise in intensification within a water catchment area, will we be notified of that?
That's also a good question. Would we know about the land use change if it were occurring? So if an applicant lets us know and applies for consent to convert, we would know about it. As I mentioned, I don't think we've received an application. We also had a 2017 land use layer that we delivered for the region, and we've worked on a 2021 layer. It's still got a couple of glitches, but that starts to identify whether there's any changes. There aren't a huge number, and I don't think there are any to dairying. We'd have to have a look. Some clearly to kiwi fruit. So we will have a map that can compare them. We still haven't ground truthed some of that 2021 work.
Councillor White.
Ngā mihi, Madam Chair, me koutou ngā memo te Puari, me ngā kaitautoko, greetings to you all. Yeah, just following up on Councillor Mati Moana's comments, I think moving ahead, a message for Stephen and our teams, that matter of engaging our Māori councillors, I think is going to become critical if we want to fill some of those gaps. And that comes to the point I believe I made some while ago around governor to governor, chiefs to chiefs, leaders to leaders. And often you'll find in those entities out there, you will be finding that the leaders are sitting in some of those key entities that can translate down the line to their component parts or their members around what's happening and how they might want to deal with that. Otherwise, if you deal at the operational level all the time, our own operators, our own council staff cannot enter that sort of political dynamic that happens often within iwi. Whereas as governors, we can actually step into that particular role and treat the leadership to leadership scenario to soften the opportunities for our operators. I think that's the key to filling any gaps. Otherwise, we'll get the same old. We'll get our operators and staff going out to the operators out there, and they're already flooded with issues. If you go leaders to leaders, then they can draw some priorities on that and handle the settings to their own operators. So governance to governance is important. So hopefully we can look at that leading into the future. Kia ora.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of comments. Firstly, the level of communication we'll be able to apply to this, I'm sad to say, will not meet the expectations of the wider iwi hapu groups if we're to meet the timelines. It probably won't meet the expectations of the community, especially the rural community. So there's going to have to be some hard decisions made in terms of when you start, who you start with, and when you pull the pin. because ultimately you're going to end up in submissions of disquiet will play out at the hearings. Otherwise, you'll never make this 24 standard. In terms of iwi and hapu, if I'm right, Councillor White, you once said, I think you've just said that the responsibility here falls with the leadership, and if we can act on an iwi basis or a waka basis, put the issue in front of them and say, you guys sort it out. Otherwise, if we have to operate in the normal manner, we're never going to get there in the timeframes we've got available. So strength to your arm in terms of that governance to governance. The other issue I was going to ask, Chair, is what is the issue with the balance reporting in terms of synthetic nitrogen?
So through the chair, there was a date which all of reporting needed to be in by, from memory, that was 31st of July. However, it was recognised that that wasn't going to be possible. So we've been working together with relevant sectors to work on how we get that reporting to occur. But what I'll do is I'll get an update from I think our compliance team are leading out on this one. So I'll get an update from our team and circulate that.
So don't make this issue bigger than what it is. I don't care what the date is, but if you're a Balance or Ravensdown shareholder, once a year you get a printout of what nutrients you actually bought from the company. So it's not too hard to get that. The issue you have to face is say, why aren't people responding in the time frame that you're giving them? Because as we've discussed here many times before, the rural community is saying, I'll give you the information, but I'm only going to give it to you once. And for the life of me, I don't know why we are utilising the Balance or the Ravensdown purchases, because it's just a mass balance of what you use during the year. It doesn't give you the detail in terms of the periods in which you applied it and where you applied it to. That information is out there. It's in the supply agreement that I have with the dairy company that I supply. You have to submit that every year. And why the regional sector or whoever hasn't been able to get to an accord, and I think it's probably sits with MFE in terms of utilising that information, escapes me. But as an operator, I'll tell you, I'm going to give it to you once. My preference is it comes through my Fonterra Dairy Diary, they refer to it as, and it's a supply condition. So if I don't give it to them, then there's some recourse that they apply to me in terms of not doing it, which essentially, if it gets really bad, is they don't pick up your milk. And those are sort of strategies you've got to use. Otherwise, you'll be going around this mulberry bush year in, year out. It's got to be simple.
Mr. Chairman, I've got Councillor McDonald and Councillor White. Are you wanting to speak again? No, just Councillor McDonald. Thank you.
Yes, just in response to the chair. Doug, sorry, I totally disagree with the comments you've made about making consultation iwi to with iwi. Look, this is why you've got to include us with staff to talk about this. In Tauranga Moana, it will not work if that's the strategy you think we should be taking, because it is not. That's why if you include us in the space, and as Te Taru has explained, if we can speak at the governor level, even it must be done hapu to hapu in Tauranga Moana and inclusive of the Māori Land Trust. And I can help staff to do that. It is not hard and it's not rocket science, but we must not assume that iwi to iwi suits all Māori constituencies. And unless we get this right, and unless you listen to us, we will continue to fail at engagement with Māori. So please, I'm imploring you, it is not iwi to iwi in Tauranga Moana. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments before I ask Mr. Lamb? Can you provide the answers to the questions that were put to you prior to the meeting?
I'm not sure I got those questions through to me. I have been on annual leave though.
So through the chair, I think the questions were around, was it tangata whenua engagement and particularly the work in terms of the Tauranga Moana work?
Just wanted an update on the work by Pierre Bennett, which was reported through to the Tauranga Moana Advisory Group, just so councillors have an understanding of actually very generally the scope of that work and how it's going to fit with this program. Thanks.
Well, where it's designed to fit is to add to the understanding of Waimari values in Tauranga Moana across this rohi. It's a project which has been struggling for resourcing, and we've identified another consultant who has bucking the trend and is moving away from central government, and is happy to work with Pierre Bennett and to look at kickstarting or restarting that project and getting it to us. So really that's where that one's up to. Yeah.
Thanks, Stephen. Right, no further questions or comments?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Oh, sorry, Councillor White.
Yeah, look, just to give a practical expression to what Councillor McDonald has said to the chair and the members of the board. If I just put up the Waihi estuary scenario as an example, the reason why that's turned around, and it has exceedingly well, is because there was a leader to a leader engagement or governance to governance engagement, which really meant that the chairs of the different iwi hapu collectives out there were pulled together. The conversation happened, and then they had the mandate to go back within their own, they had the mandate on behalf of their hapu and iwi to make the call. But that was the assurances given, that you were actually going back to those hapu iwi entities through their leaders who are mandated to make decisions, who actually translated back to the hapu to make the call to come together and do what they needed to do. So that's one example. That's all I'm saying, just giving a practical expression to that. It's not the only one. If you look at Rangiuri, it's the same thing, being able to go to the hapu leaders and then they connect to the hapu members who give them the mandate to make the call. That's what it is. And so we can do that as governors on this council. We can talk to the governors out there. Our staff can't do that easily. And so that's the help we can give. I thought I'd just give some practical example.
Thank you. No further questions or comments. I shall move that the report be received. Do I have a seconder? Don't all rush at once. So Councillor Brunning, thank you. I'll put that, all those in favour, aye, against and carried. Nikki, Stephen, thanks very much for the report and the best going forward. Now, Councillor is going to move that the public be excluded from the next section of the meeting. Seconded, Councillor Brunning. All those in favour, aye, against and carried. Rachel Boyd is here to give us an